Good evening. Nice to see you again after the weekend. Tonight is the first of 4 talks, and they've been entitled The Way of Developing Bodhicitta. So I would love to say that I can talk to you from personal experience, but I don't have the experience of generating this bodhicitta in my mind. But I've been inspired by my teachers to become a Buddhist, to become a monk, and to practice as much as I can to train my mind in this most wonderful attitude of bodhicitta, of sense of personal responsibility for the welfare of all beings by attaining, which is accomplished by attaining one's potential of enlightenment or Buddhahood. So this is the very essence of all of Buddha's teachings on the path to enlightenment. Of course, the wisdom realizing emptiness, which we call ultimate bodhicitta, is essential for abandoning the obstacles in our minds to achieving our potential. But the conventional bodhicitta, which we're going to be talking about, is as this altruistic intention to achieve Buddhahood for all others. So as it is motivated by great compassion and great love, completely undiscriminating towards every living being. So from that point of view, the conventional bodhicitta, which we're talking about, is the primary cause for achieving all the realizations on the path up to enlightenment. Traditionally, as you know, when we do engage in any Dharma activity, in fact, any activity, we should first generate our mind in a strong, positive motivation, a purpose. So for over 4 talks, which is quite a lot, we're going to go into detail discussing the method of developing bodhicitta. I'm sure that many of you have had very profound teachings and deep teachings from lamas who have actualized the mind of bodhicitta, such as our common guru, Lama Thubten Rinpoche, who without question manifests the realization of bodhicitta. And so many of the great lamas who have been here, Khensa Rinpoche, Geshe Lama Kunchok, and I know there have been many other great teachers who have been personal examples of bodhicitta. So we are the students, and it is up to us to try and put what they have taught us into practice. So from what you've heard before, as a motivation for engaging in this discussion of Dharma, try in your mind first to generate your mind in the aspect of refuge in the 3 jewels in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the purpose is to participate in this discussion in order to understand and follow the path of bodhicitta to your full potential of enlightenment. Okay. So now, I'm not sure how many were here on the weekend for the weekend teachings. Maybe a bit less than half. All right. I thought to start with the last point that we talked about in the weekend teachings. And that was a discussion of the disturbing emotions, of how the disturbing emotions arise in our mind. There, I mentioned on Sunday the 5 steps. And the first stage, or the first step in developing a disturbing emotion, so the disturbing emotions are, the mental afflictions, what we call afflictions, ignorance, anger, attachment, pride, jealousy, and so on. The first stage is that whatever appears to our mind, whether it's something we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch with our senses, or something we think about with our sixth sense, our mental consciousness, all the objects that appear to our mind appear to exist as if they are independent of causes and conditions, existing in their own right, independent of mental labeling or mental imputation, as if they stand on their own. And this appearance is due to imprints on our mind from past lives that we have never known the reality of how self and others and the objects in the world exist. And through that darkness of not knowing, and through the imprints of even prior lives to that, things appear to us in a wrong way, to exist in a way in which they don't. But we are not aware of that mistake in the way our own I appears to us, our own, the person of our mother, father, husband, wife, children. We don't realize that the way they exist, in the way they appear to our mind, is mistaken. So we simply take that appearance to be true. An illustration. Many years ago, I read a story that happened in England where there was a little old lady at the shopping centre doing her weekend shopping. And there was a man doing his shopping in the same supermarket. And this man was an actor. And his job was to play the role in a television soap opera. He played the role of a really nasty character who did terrible things. This little old lady saw the actor, and he appeared to her as the nasty character. And so she started beating him with her umbrella for doing what he did the previous night on television. So there was an ordinary person who appeared in a way which he totally did not exist as the character in the soap opera. But she took that appearance to be true. And she got angry. And she acted because she believed that the appearance was true. So she was totally mistaken. And she created negative karma. Through anger, she wanted to hurt somebody. So, something similar is happening to us all the time. And there are so many different objects that appear to our mind. If we think our own self, me, I, whenever we experience something, we're conscious of me, the person, experiencing that sensory object, that music or light or taste or whatever. Or there's me thinking. I am thinking about such and such an event. So there is the sense of self as constantly appearing to our mind whenever we experience something. So our own I, our own sense of self, it appears in a distorted way. Now, there is a self which does exist, right? And I'm sure you've heard in the Buddha's teachings. Individuals exist as independence upon their name given to their body and mind. We call this labeling or imputation with our name. I mentioned in the weekend, a child, a particular child with a particular name exists and depends upon the name given by the parents. Prior to the parents giving the name, that particular child, if its name is John, John doesn't exist. John comes into existence when the parents give the name. Then everybody asks, oh, lovely child, lovely baby, what's his name? So the parents give the name, and so everybody else gets to know that this particular child is suitable to be called John. And when that child enters the room, they correctly identify the person as John. So similarly, ourselves, even before we learn what our name is, there's still a sense of self, of me, of I. And that is correct. That is the I who exists. The person who has this particular body and mind, who eats, sleeps, walks, things happen to the child, growing up. This is the person who exists. We in Buddhist terms, we say the merely labelled person, right? Who is dependent upon the body and mind and the label and other things. But as well as the appearance of the person who exists, there is a false appearance, like the actor falsely appearing to this old lady's eye as being the character that he played in the TV soap. So we also have that wrong appearance of an I which exists in my own right, a real, true me who exists vaguely within the body and mind, in connection with the body and mind. There is a sense of an I that is the true me and abides within here somewhere. So there is this appearance, that is a mistaken appearance, but we don't know it's mistaken. So we take it to be true. So that is the second step in developing disturbing emotions. First step, the wrong appearance. The second step is our mind grasping or holding that appearance to be correct. So we call this second step the self-grasping ignorance. And what it refers to, that the self that we grasp as truly me does not exist at all. Just as the character that the actor played does not exist as a real character at all, but there is the appearance, and the little old lady took that to be true. So whenever we think I, there is this mixture of the I, of the appearance of the I who exists, and an I which does not exist at all. Does that clear? Now, in terms of the self, the appearance of an inherently existing or truly existing I, which exists in my own right, which is a mistaken appearance, that is what we call the self-grasping ignorance. But the mind also, in a more subtle way, sees the I as more important than others. There is a mental attitude wanting to protect this real true me from any harm, and to give this real true me every pleasure in a more important sense than others. So it's an elevated sense of self-importance at the expense of others. You may have heard many teachings and books you've read. This is called self-cherishing. Sometimes self-cherishing conception, but that is too much. I use the term self-importance. I am more important than you, than others. My happiness, my freedom of suffering is more important. Also on the weekend, we talked about how the disturbing emotions or mental afflictions are called mental factors, like pride, attachment, anger, jealousy, and so on. These are aspects of mind which occur within the sixth sense, the mental consciousness. The other five consciousnesses, eye, ear, smell, taste, and touch, there aren't disturbing emotions manifesting when we experience sensory objects, even pleasant or unpleasant. But you see, our mind is constantly receiving information from the senses, and we start thinking about what we're experiencing. And so this mental consciousness is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. But if, for example, something bad is being experienced, and anger is, the mental factor of anger is manifesting, then that anger is a non-virtuous state of mind, an agitated, afflicted state of mind. And that colours the entire mental consciousness with non-virtue. So our mind, when we're angry, there is no manifest goodness or virtue. Our mental consciousness is totally non-virtuous in the aspect of anger or attachment or pride. If, on the other hand, the mental factor of love or compassion, generosity, and so on, these virtuous mental factors manifest, the entire mental consciousness becomes virtuous. It's not partly virtuous and partly non-virtuous. It's either totally virtuous, totally non-virtuous, or totally neutral. And of course it fluctuates as our emotions, our constructive emotions, are replaced by destructive emotions. Our main mental consciousness is simultaneously altered by the particular emotion. Is that clear? Now, I've said that always, whenever we experience things, things appear wrongly, and we grasp that wrong appearance to be true. And that's called self-grasping ignorance. So that self-grasping ignorance is not virtuous, it's not non-virtuous, it's neutral. And it's always manifesting in the mental consciousness. Because we're always thinking about things. We're always experiencing things. And there's always the wrong appearance. We're always grasping that not only the object is incorrectly, but the I, the me, who is experiencing the object, is appearing wrongly. So there's also a grasping at the self to exist inherently. Therefore, there is always self-cherishing. The mental consciousness is always in the aspect of self-importance. No matter what we're experiencing, pleasant or unpleasant, there is this subtle state of mind of, this is mine, I want this, I want this before anybody else. There's a competitive nature, there's an antagonistic nature, but the basic self-importance is there in our mind. So it's very difficult to overcome self-importance and generate virtue, wanting others to be happy. Difficult but not impossible. Now, bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta, is the opposite of self-importance. It is the antidote to self-importance. It is the solution, if you like. The sense of self-importance is an obscuration to Buddhahood. It is overcome by bodhicitta. The other, more gross, self-grasping ignorance, that is overcome by the wisdom realizing emptiness. So we have these two problems, self-grasping ignorance and the more subtle self-importance or self-cherishing. The path that Buddha taught is twofold, wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the antidote to self-grasping ignorance, and great compassion is the antidote to self-importance. And great compassion is the immediately preceding step to bodhicitta. So this is how we enter the Bodhisattva's path and we follow the Bodhisattva's path to Buddhahood through generating great compassion and then a sense of universal responsibility and then bodhicitta. So self-importance is not an affliction. It is a state of the mental consciousness that in ordinary people, it's always there. It is the main mental consciousness. Bodhicitta also is not a mental factor. Bodhicitta is the main mental consciousness. It is the whole mental consciousness that has the determination to achieve Buddhahood in order to guide all beings out of suffering. Is that clear? We're going to talk, we've got 4 talks, but this is the fundamental meaning of the whole presentation of bodhicitta. How to develop bodhicitta. Okay, you're welcome to ask questions at any time. Don't hesitate. It's helpful for yourself and for others if some point comes up. I don't know how much you've heard before. I don't know much myself. So it's a group phenomenon, learning how to practice bodhicitta. Now, you've heard of the 7 points of thought transformation in the Lam Rim. There is the training the mind in bodhicitta is condensed into 7 points. The first of these points is meditating on the first parts of the graduated path, what we call the first scope and the second scope. It's more than simply hearing the presentation of impermanence and death, the presentation of the suffering of the 3 lower realms, the presentation of refuge in Dhamma, presentation of karma, the presentation of the 4 Noble Truths, and the presentation of the minds and mental factors, and the 12 links of dependent origination. It's more than just hearing that. It's even more than just thinking about it. It is deeply meditating upon those topics. Before I made the decision to ask Lama Yeshe if I could become a monk, I'd done a Lamrim course at Kopan and another one in Australia, but given by Lama Thubten Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe at Chenrezig Institute, our centre in Queensland. It was the first big course there after they built the centre. And I had taken refuge just a few months before in Bodh Gaya, and I was deeply wanting to learn more about the Dharma. And so I spoke to Lama Yeshe after the retreat, and I told him I wanted to do a long retreat and meditate on the Lam Rim. And Rinpoche had just given an empowerment of Avalokiteshvara for Chenrezig. And so Lama Yeshe, he took me aside and he told me, good, do this retreat, and briefly how to do it. And the retreat had finished, but there was still a lot of people there. And the word went round, Lama Yeshe wants everybody to come to the teaching hall. So I went, and excuse me, for an hour, Lama Yeshe explained how to do a personal meditation retreat on the Lam Rim. I thought, wow. So I was writing it all down. And so friends and I, we built a cabin. I picked up a cold virus on my way here from Australia. Yesterday I couldn't have given a talk. Tonight I'm okay, sort of. So during that retreat, I had Lama Zopa's commentary on the Lam Rim. And so, according to Lama Yeshe's instructions, I meditate on the teaching of the Lam Rim over and over again, from the beginning, devotion to the Guru, right through to the end, bodhicitta and emptiness, and then back again. For 3 months, friends and I built a cabin in the bush, which probably has just been burnt. It was way out in the rainforest north of Sydney, and that whole region has been burnt. And I didn't see anybody for 3 months, but I had this meditation to do. And Lama Yeshe he told me that, that during the retreat, if I ever had a question, I should write him a letter, which is a bit out of the question because I was a long, long, long way from any post office and I had no communication with anybody. But it was interesting because when questions came up, and they did, I used to compose a letter in my mind, and I never finished a letter because the answer was there. I'd already been given the answers by Lama Yeshe and Lama Thubten Rinpoche in the teachings. And I noticed that. I said, wow, it's coming. Another thing that I noticed was that when I got to the end and I really meditated on each level of the Lamrim and meditating on Bodhicitta, I realized that this meditation on the suffering, on great compassion for suffering sentient beings was totally dependent upon the first scope meditation of meditating on the suffering of the lower realms. Bodhicitta is the total dedication to the welfare of all sentient beings. It's incredibly powerful. It's as powerful as there are a number of sentient beings. And it can only be genuine if we have put ourselves in the situation of the hell realms, of the hungry ghost realms, of the animal realm, and the sufferings of the humans, and the sufferings of the devas, the gods as well. We have to, in our meditation, have tried to experience to be there and generate the fear, the mental despair that those sentient beings must be experiencing. And only having done that can we have a chance of having universal love and universal compassion. It's so powerful. So I really, and doing the Tonglen, the giving and taking meditation, where you're actually taking the sufferings of the hell beings upon yourself, and you're mentally giving them every happiness, every positive virtue from yourself, giving to them, that giving and taking, that is the most powerful way of generating bodhicitta. And it's, as I say, you can't do it unless you have meditated on the beginning of the Lamrim, the suffering of the three lower realms, in a very powerful way, such that the tears come. I did tell somebody that tonight we're going to just meditate on the suffering of the hells and the hungry ghosts. And this person said to me, "Oh, I hate that meditation. I'm so bored with it. I don't want to meditate on it." But we have to. The whole Lamrim, the graduated path to enlightenment, is one meditation. And like the steps of a ladder, if you don't have the beginning steps, you can't get up to the higher steps. You need the lower steps to get to the middle steps, and the middle steps to get to the higher steps. So I won't lead meditation on suffering of the hells, but the way to do it, I mean, the descriptions are pretty far out. You know, they sound pretty weird. And scientifically or intellectually, we can debate and question. It's not really true. But we have to understand that the way Buddha described each of the hell realms, you know, the hot hells, cold hells, neighboring hells, as if they were like human beings experiencing these situations, is purely a means for us to be able to meditate and put ourselves with our human bodies and minds in those situations. The literal accuracy of the description doesn't matter. The point is to learn the descriptions of those types of suffering and then really imagine that we are there experiencing not only the physical suffering, but what's even worse is the mental despair, the hopelessness that the hell beings, hungry ghosts, even animals would feel. Really feel for it. And then great compassion can come. Particularly when we do the third scope meditations, on thinking how every sentient being has been infinitely kind to us as our mother, our father, our brother, our sister, our husband, our wife, and so on, in past lives. To seeing the reality that we are one universal family, that we are connected with each other so strongly. Like in this life, of course, we have family ties, and we think it's so important to look after our parents and our brothers, sisters, our family, our children. Special. More, in general, my family is more important than others. Others are needy, but my family is special. That's self-importance. Because we identify with the family as me. That is this subtle obscuration that Bodhicitta has to overcome. It's not that we should neglect those who depend upon us, our family of this life, but we should open our mind to genuinely see every other person in the street, in the shops, around the world, in other universes, seeing them all in the same way that is see the members of our family in this life, and have the same heartfelt wish to give them happiness, to free them from suffering. Particularly those past mothers and fathers who are now experiencing the sufferings of the hells, the hungry ghosts, and animal realm, and the higher sufferings as well. So that is the bodhicitta, and that is the antidote to self-importance. So you can see how the whole long room is actually geared towards generating bodhicitta. It is the bodhisattva's path. Okay, so such an important subject that you've asked me to talk about tonight and the next 3 talks. Now, more according to the graduated path outline, the beginning of the third scope. Well, just before I get to that, the beginning of the actual outline of bodhicitta. In the 3 scopes, there is the progressive development of renunciation. Remember, the teachings at the first level are given in order to enable us to renounce attachment to the pleasures of this life. When we check out, most of this life has been spent pursuing the pleasures here and now, the things we want, possessions, material possessions. We want sensory pleasure, we want praise, we want admiration, we want to be loved. We need, we crave the word, I love you. That's so important. And we have such aversion to the opposite. I don't love you, or I don't love you anymore. Criticism, blame, not having possessions. Now, our whole life is caught up in these 8 worldly dharmas. So the first level of renunciation is to renounce craving and aversion to the things of this life and turn our mind towards the future life. Not just happiness of the future life, but particularly rebirth as a human or as a deva, within which we can continue to practice Dharma. So, not having renunciation is an effect of self-importance. Self-importance, which includes the importance of me and mine, my body, my person, my possessions, my family and friends. So, at least to give that up by meditating on death and impermanence, the shortness of this life, and the suffering of the 3 lower realms, we can aspire to have a happy rebirth. But then the happy rebirth, we know, is not all that it's meant to be. We've taken refuge, we've observed karma, we've observed pure morality, we've achieved a happy rebirth. But if we haven't eliminated the self-grasping ignorance, in that happy rebirth, there's danger that we'll create the cause to go back to the lower realms. So our renunciation has to be stronger. That we have to then renounce grasping at the happiness of future rebirths and turn our mind towards nirvana, liberation. So this, once again, is attacking the self-importance. First, self-importance, wanting the happiness of this life, and then secondly, self-importance, I want happy rebirths. But to achieve nirvana, to achieve liberation, and Buddha taught the path, we do need the wisdom realizing emptiness, which will destroy the afflictions, right? The disturbing emotions. But remember, self-importance is not an affliction. It is a mental attitude. And it's taught that even the arhat, the person who has followed the paths of a hero or a solitary realizer, has achieved nirvana, the Hinayana path, has the thought, I want nirvana. That thought of I want to achieve liberation, I want to achieve nirvana, is still a manifestation of self-importance. It's still in the mind. And it is an obstacle to taking responsibility for the welfare of others. So the teachings of Bodhicitta are given to remove that self-importance, even that the arhat has, and to open the mind to taking responsibility for all sentient beings. And as we develop bodhicitta, and we generate great compassion, universal compassion, at that point we destroy self-importance. Self-important, we have in our general terminology, it's just going back to ordinary beings like ourselves. There is self-consciousness, isn't there? I think self-consciousness is a acute sense of self and self-reference. Whenever we're in a social situation or any situation, we're self-conscious of what people are saying about me, what's happening to me, and etc. What are the rumours about me? And this self-consciousness makes us acutely sensitive to things which might or might not go well. And we can't relax when we're self-conscious. That's self-importance. If we go back, I talked about the development of the afflictions. I only mentioned 2 steps. Remember? First was the wrong appearance. Secondly, there was a grasping at that wrong appearance to be true. This is a self-grasping ignorance, and in a subtle way, there is self-importance. Now the third step, developing disturbing emotions, the third step is called incorrect appearance. And this, whenever things happen to us, they're either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. So when pleasant objects are experienced, then this inappropriate perception, it exaggerates the good qualities. Say there's another person, and we think, oh, that person is so attractive, I really would like to be good friends with that person. So, our mind exaggerates the good qualities. It even superimposes non-existent good qualities on the person we see as being really desirable. Even to the point where others might say, what does he or she see in him or her? They're not so attractive. But we don't know. We exaggerate. So we totally relate to this attractive person as a projection of our mind. Then, after that inappropriate attention, attachment comes. So attachment, the object of attachment, is the exaggerated person who does, or object, or whatever it is to which we're attached, does not have the good qualities that we project upon it. But we don't know that. So we cling and we crave to be with the person. And then the next step is we create karma. We do, out of attachment, we kill, steal, lie, whatever, to get the object of attachment. And the same with painful objects. We inappropriately or incorrectly see them, people or objects, as worse than they actually are. We exaggerate the negative qualities. And so the object of our then becomes an object of aversion, and we have anger or dislike or even hatred. But actually, our anger is not directed towards the actual person. Our anger is directed towards the person we think they are, and that's wrong. Just as the actor who the little old lady beat with the umbrella, her anger was directed towards the person she thought he was, but he wasn't that person at all. He was completely empty of being the nasty character. So if we check out all of our emotions of wanting and not wanting, are invalid. Because the way pleasant objects appear to our mind are subjectively distorted much better than they actually are. And displeasing people, displeasing situations do not exist as they appear to our mind. We have subjectively distorted them. And so our emotions are mistaken. But we don't know that, so we create negative karma through our emotions. We pine, we crave for the things we want and crave to be free from the things we don't want. So, bodhicitta, this conventional bodhicitta, this universal responsibility for all beings, is necessarily cultivated along with the wisdom realizing emptiness. The two aid each other in developing on the path. So that was the point that I wanted to make. Now, so the definition of bodhicitta, it's the primary mental consciousness, right? There are 6 primary types of consciousness, the 5 senses: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, smell, taste, touch consciousness, and mental consciousness. Mental consciousness is the realm of our knowledge, our memories, our thoughts, our ideas, our emotions, all in mental consciousness. Primary means the consciousness in general. Secondary, or mental factor, means the particular aspects such as constructive emotions, love, compassion, generosity, and so on, patience. Destructive emotions, anger, attachment, pride, jealousy. So those are called secondary minds or secondary mental factors. Any one moment of consciousness, say mental consciousness, has a various collection of mental factors. But any one moment is either virtuous, associated with virtuous mental factors, non-virtuous, associated with non-virtuous mental factors, or neutral. It's never a mixture. Okay, so the definition of bodhicitta, the primary mental consciousness that has the full intention to achieve Buddhahood or enlightenment for the benefit of others. So it's the wish to lead others out of suffering. There are 2 aspirations. Right? There's what we call the causal aspiration, which is the wish to lead others out of suffering. And then there's what we call the resultant aspiration to achieve Buddhahood so that one is qualified to lead others out of suffering. All right, so that's what bodhicitta is. Renunciation, we talked about renunciation. Now, in everyday life, when we wake up, we just have the 8 worldly dharmas. Our mind is automatically looking, what can I do today to be happy? What can I do today to avoid unhappiness and suffering? Right? It's just automatically there. Then we reach the second scope. What can I do today to achieve liberation? Right? That is automatically there. Spontaneously. When we generate bodhicitta, automatically, spontaneously, 24 hours a day, there is the intention to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of other beings. Right? So that's important. it is completely renunciation of self-importance. So to get there, we have to train our mind in meditation. So we do the meditations on bodhicitta, and during the meditation, you're meditating on how each being has been kind to me as my mother, and generating the wish to repay the kindness, the heartwarming love, compassion. And in the meditation, we do generate the thought, how wonderful to achieve Buddhahood, to rescue all my mothers from suffering. So this thought exists, and it's dependent upon the energy that we put into that meditation. But it's not actual bodhicitta. It's called contrived bodhicitta. And because when we get up from the meditation, it fades away. We go back to the old self-centered self-importance. Actual bodhicitta never fades away. It is there in the mind 24 hours a day. When it's very, very initially generated, it is possible to momentarily lose actual bodhicitta. There are the stories of the, I forget, one of the Indian scholars who generated actual bodhicitta, and one of the gods saw that he had just done that, so he appeared as a human and was crying, and he was crying, and so the meditator said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Oh, I need a human hand to appease somebody." And so, because this meditator just generated bodhicitta, he cut off his right hand and handed it with his left hand to the god. And the god said, knocked it to the ground, "How dare you hand me something with your filthy left hand?" Because in India, the left hand is dirty, and you never give a gift to somebody with your left hand. And he lost, so this, who was it? Shariputra. Was it Shariputra? Anyway, he lost bodhicitta temporarily. How can I work for all sentient beings with such bad people as this? But it came back again later. So, but after that initial time of first generating bodhicitta, then it's stable. It won't be lost. And so at that point, one has become a bodhisattva, and that's the point of entry into the Mahayana path. Of course, one has been studying bodhicitta for a long time, but one is not an actual Mahayanist until one generates bodhicitta. So the actual bodhicitta could be at two levels. There's what we call the wishing or aspiring bodhicitta. So wishing occurs at the beginning of the bodhisattva's path. You've heard about the paths of accumulation, paths of preparation. But the aspiring bodhicitta occurs at those levels. And so at this stage, the bodhisattva strongly meditates on emptiness as a support to the bodhicitta. In general, most bodhisattvas will realize emptiness intellectually on the path of accumulation, and then they will enter the path of preparation to directly realize emptiness. And it's only when they have the direct realization of emptiness and they come out of meditation and they engage in the 6 perfections, that they have what's called engaging bodhicitta. So, even though the bodhisattvas on the earlier paths do practice the 6 perfections, or no, put it this way, they practice generosity, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, and so on, the 6 perfections. But they're not called perfections. They're just those practices. They're only the perfections of generosity, enthusiasm, morality, and so on, when they have the direct realization of emptiness. That leads to the perfection of those 6 types of meditation. So actual bodhicitta has the wishing and the engaging aspects. Is that okay? So, I've defined bodhicitta and talked about what it is as being the opposite of self-importance. In a text written by Maitreya, he gave various illustrations of the qualities of bodhicitta. And the first quality, the analogy, is that bodhicitta is like a seed for attaining all the enlightened qualities. So the enlightened qualities are the realizations of the whole path of meditation, path of seeing, all of the 10 bhumis, or the 10 grounds that a bodhisattva has to achieve one after the other up to Buddhahood. So bodhicitta is the seed for achieving those realizations. If you don't have the seed of bodhicitta in the mind, you will never achieve those realizations. Secondly, Maitreya said it's like a field in which all the virtues of the bodhisattva vehicle and all that's to be acquired on the path of that vehicle will grow. So if a farmer has prepared a perfect field for growing a crop, or many crops, then if the farmer does it excellently, the crops will flourish and they won't degenerate. So bodhicitta in the mind of the practitioner enables the inner realizations to grow, and they will never degenerate. So the 10 grounds of the bodhisattva are progressive. The bodhisattvas don't enter one ground and then fall back. They progressively move towards enlightenment. The third analogy is like the earth on which the environment and its inhabitants are supported. Because bodhicitta, like the ground or the earth, supports this building, it supports the people, it supports everything upon it. So bodhicitta is the foundation of all of the pure realms, the palaces, the retinue of bodhisattvas, the Buddha's enjoyment body, Sambhogakaya, and all of the possessions of a Buddha. So, as I mentioned in the weekend, the path of wisdom is the direct cause of the Dhammakaya, the omniscient wisdom mind of Buddhahood. The path of bodhicitta is the accumulation of merit on the path, which leads to the attainment of the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body of a Buddha. So, supported by the Dhammakaya, they support each other. So the Buddha's purpose, a bodhisattva's purpose in becoming a Buddha is to guide all sentient beings from suffering. That is the bodhicitta. So upon attaining Buddhahood, as a result of that bodhicitta, the Buddha's form body, the Sambhogakaya, and the emanation body, the Rupakaya, spontaneously manifest, well, as a result of that merit. And so each Buddha has his or her own Pure Land, where they teach their circle of Arya Bodhisattvas. And everything there, that is that is the result of bodhicitta. Also the emanation bodies, such as Shakyamuni Buddha, such as Buddhas appearing, Buddha emanating in an aspect of an animal, or as an inanimate object, or in any way, these emanation bodies, these are the result of bodhicitta. They're supported by bodhicitta. Excuse me. It's also likened to a wish-fulfilling jewel or a vase, like a magic vase, a magic wish-fulfilling jewel that grants every wish for self and others. It's the result of bodhicitta. And the final analogy is that bodhicitta is like armor. You know that a soldier wears armor, and that bodhicitta stops the conceptual inappropriate attentions. Remember, I said that in the development of the afflictions, it's all right.
I don't know if you lozenges. I have some recorder ones.
Okay. So, when we have the experience of pleasant and unpleasant objects, we exaggerate the good or bad qualities. And we project non-existent good or bad qualities. So bodhicitta stops those projections. If I could talk, I could explain it in more detail, but I can't talk much. I'm not crying. It's okay. It's okay. So, what I've been talking about tonight, I've tried to introduce the importance of bodhicitta And next week, I'll be able to speak much more clearly. And we'll go into the actual methods for generating bodhicitta. So I'll have to finish a little bit early because this won't work. So let's dedicate the positive energy of what we've been able to talk about tonight to all sentient beings. May I achieve my full potential of enlightenment so that I'm fully qualified to repay the kindness of all mother sentient beings. Okay, thank you so much.